Let's flip to the ESG thing and talk about that a little bit. That to me is just a huge opportunity. I've seen some data come out that Honeywell has made somewhere around 90% improvements in its own. And what I say is, it seems like Honeywell is a bit of its own biggest client in many of its innovation efforts. And this is one great example of it. First, maybe just broadly, what's driving ESG as such a priority for Honeywell?
Because ESG is embedded in so many things that we do across the business. And, just to maybe tee up something else, I mean, every year we issue our ESG sustainability report, that comes out every September. And I encourage all of our investors to at least flip through that. It's about a 70, 80-page document, which comprehensively breaks down what we do and how we do it on all elements of ESG, the E, the S, and the G. And I think we have a track record, frankly, that's second to none. And I think that you see that, more than 50% of our R&D spend is on ESG-oriented solutions. And as percent of the total, ESG revenue is going to continue to grow. And I'll just point to a couple of specific examples. I mean, I talked about U.S. Digital Designs. I mean, that is a very ESG-oriented company. I mean, saving people's lives is a very big ESG thing. Probably the one element that maybe doesn't get talked about as much as I think it should. Now, this is maybe a little bit away from digitization and maybe sort of, where we talked, but probably our fastest growing business at the moment, there used to be Intelligrated, which, by the way, is still growing extraordinarily fast, but actually one that I think going to bet on is going to grow even faster is our sustainability technology solutions business, which really contains all the technologies that are going to be relevant in the new energy infrastructure. So whether it be green fuels, whether it be plastics recycling, whether it be carbon capture, whether it be hydrogen, fuel cell batteries, all of those technologies are contained in that business. And we've had some great wins with JGC to name one, of our partnership with United Airline being another, our partnership with Saker in Europe for plastics recycling. That business is going to exhibit exponential-like growth, and I think can be Honeywell and specifically our UOP can be transformational in terms of the role that they're going to play in taking the energy segment from what it was to what it will be in the future. And as you know, there's a lot of commitments around zero carbon emissions in 2040, 2050. We can be that bridge with our technology portfolio. It's available today, so this is not futuristic. A lot of this is available today. We can help a lot of these companies really transform to who they will be in the future.
Yeah, there's a massive energy transition that's going on around the world, every industry. And as a company that is so industry focused, not just industrial, but industry, like you have such a tremendous track record in areas, manufacturing and aerospace. We've talked about a lot of these. Every one of these industries is under a different subset of pressures. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that kind of the say-do is something I hear a lot, or that sort of posturing that's gone on versus execution. Because I feel like over the last few years, we've gotten a lot of posturing. And I've tracked primarily tech. And so as like with Honeywell, I've been watching your technology transformation. But almost every major company in technology has made some level of a commitment, saying by 20X, 30, 35, 40, they're going to achieve carbon neutral, or they're going to be 90% sustainable goods, or they're going to be using only recycled fuels, or they're only going to be sustainable labor. There's just a lot of promises being made. And, you and I had a little time to talk off the record, and I liked one of the things you said along the lines of, 2030 versus 2050. I mean, you have things being committed that will be 2, 3, 4 CEOs from now for some of these companies, maybe more. Right. And so it's kind of easy to say it, but the doing is complicated. And you mentioned you have these technologies that exist. You guys have probably one of the most comprehensive data sets of environmental sensor data in the world. You have macros on the utilization of materials that are required for companies. This is very real and tangible for the tech industry, which is going to be one of the most accountable because they're making the biggest promises. They want to be on the front end of this. Honeywell's not really just going to be a partner. From what I understand, they're really going to need a company with your capabilities to be able to meet the promises they're making to their stakeholders.
Well, that's exactly right. And I talked about some of the technologies that we have today that can make that reality. And there are two sides to this. The first one is, how do you remediate? How do you become less hydrocarbon intensive? That's a big body of work and a lot of investment and transition and transformation has to take place there. But there's another element that's just as important, which is measurement. You also have to be able to prove the fact that you are not as carbon intensive as you were in the past, and you have to have sensors and systems and software to be able to do that. And just to give you an example, we are currently in the process of instrumenting one of our own facilities, that happens to be a manufacturing facility in this case, but to really measure the emissions in real time, so as we implement technologies to minimize those emissions or eliminate those emissions, we can actually prove that. We can prove that, and we can measure it in real time to say, okay, here's what the carbon emissions were, and here's what they are after the applications of a given technology. We think that that's really important because today it's mostly, math models and applications and so on, and I think that's helpful. But until we develop a system of record to actually track carbon emissions, I don't know that we're going to have a fully compliant infrastructure in the industry.
I feel like the word from everything you just said is really accountability. There's a big accountability opportunity that Honeywell can help these companies to deliver on, and that's something I'll definitely be watching closely. But the sustainability story is very, very compelling. Last question. There seems to be a bit of a debate in the markets right now about the large conglomerate versus the sort of systemic breaking of these companies. You saw it with GE years ago, but now you're seeing some recent ones with Johnson & Johnson, with Bosch. Obviously, Honeywell, it seems much of your stuff is integrated, but you're also sort of perceived as a conglomerate.
Right.
I'd just love to get your take on sort of what you see the forces are here and why Honeywell is currently better positioned in its current condition.
Right. Yeah, maybe a couple of answers. So the first one is, we don't view ourselves as a conglomerate. I think when people think about Honeywell, they think it's a conglomerate. But there is a technology theme that's very, very common. Our industrial automation business, our aerospace business, which is, the heart of it is avionics. Well, what's avionics? It's you control the aircraft through the avionics platform. Same thing as warehouse automation, our SPS business, building technologies. We're the preeminent player in building controls. That's what we do. So, but I can see why people would say that. It's a natural view because we don't really have that as the central theme. We don't have control and automation as the central theme. We have the end markets as a central theme. We talk about buildings, but we could be named Honeywell Control and Automation. It would fit.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think the moral of your answer there is that conglomerate would not be an appropriate word to utilize, and although the market may sometimes misinterpret it because of the diversity of your business, that everything has common threads that tie it together, create value at scale, which is the difference between a conglomerate and a diversified enterprise that's building things across many industries. Darius, Adamczyk, thank you so much for joining me today on Making Markets.
Thank you.